You are live.
All right, thank you. Good evening and welcome to a virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Architectural Review Board. The Ohio Legislature passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to have virtual meetings. We appreciate the ability to maintain our continuity of government. For the present time, we are holding our meetings online and live streaming those meetings on YouTube. You can access the live stream on the city's website. The meeting procedure for each case this evening will begin with a staff presentation, followed by an opportunity for the applicants to make a presentation. The board will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions prior to hearing public comments. Finally, the board will then deliberate on each case. In order to submit any questions or comments regarding an item listed on this evening's agenda, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the meeting moderator. We want to accommodate public participation to the greatest extent possible, and we do welcome your comments on cases. Please use your valid name and address when submitting your comments and refrain from making any inappropriate comments. We will start our meeting, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if the flag could be displayed, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. We're fortunate this evening to have Vice Mayor DeRosa with us. She is going to perform the oath of office to reappoint myself and Sean Cotter and to also appoint a new member, Martha Cooper. So I will turn it over to you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. If I could, just to take a moment to thank you all for your service and your willingness to re-up and to serve again. I know just how much work it is, and it's very important work. And on behalf of City Council, I just want to express my sincere appreciation for all you do. And I don't get a chance to do that all that often, but I want to thank staff too for all of their support and hard work, because I know just how important they are for your ability to do the work you need to do. So thank you very much for that. All right, so Gary, you want to start?
Sure.
Okay, if you raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I state your full name.
I, Gary Alexander,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member of
the duties as a member of
the Architectural Review Board
the Architectural Review Board
of the City of Dublin,
of the City of Dublin,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and the ordinances and charter of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
and the ordinances and charter of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, Sean, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, raise your right hand, please. I state your full name.
I, Sean Cotter,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member of
the duties as a member of
the Architectural Review Board
the Architectural Review Board
of the City of Dublin,
of the City of Dublin,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and to the best of my ability,
great, preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and the ordinances and charter
and the ordinances and charter
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Sean. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Marty, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, have you got it memorized or would you like me to read it with you?
You better read it.
Here we go. Please state your full name,
I, Martha Cooper,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member of
the duties as a member of
the Architectural Review Board
the Architectural Review Board
of the City of Dublin
of the City of Dublin,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and the ordinances and charter
and the ordinances and charter
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much, Gary, and I wish you all a great meeting tonight.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, Judy, do you want to take the roll
Sure. Mr. Alexander,
here?
Mr. Cotter,
Here.
Mr. Kanaki,
Here.
Ms. Cram,
Here.
Ms. Cooper.
Here.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the election of officers. This evening, we will make appointments for the chair and vice chair role for the 2021-2022 calendar year. In cases where the board considers personnel matters, we may adjourn to an executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn to an executive session?
I'll move.
I so,
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Whoever seconds.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. Members of the audience, we will return to this meeting after some deliberations. So I guess we go to the other link that was sent to us and leave this meeting. So hopefully
With the big red
I'll see you shortly.
Nikki, just doing a mic test.
You're good.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep, got you that time.
Okay, it looks like we're all back. All right. I would entertain a motion to reconvene our meeting.
I'll make the motion to reconvene the meeting.
I'll second.
Ms. Cooper, Ms. Cooper,
You're on mute.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Kaneki,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
I'm back here. Yes.
All right, I will entertain a motion to appoint I'll entertain a motion to appoint the vice chair. Does someone want to make that motion and identify the individual?
Yep, I'll make a motion to nominate Amy Cram as vice chair.
I'll second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Kaneki,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Is there a motion to appoint a chair for this term?
I can make a motion to appoint Gary Alexander as chair.
I'll second.
Mr. Kaneki,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is our acceptance of the documents and approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a motion to accept? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't know if you need to say it, but I'll make a motion to accept them, the documents.
Okay, thanks.
I'll second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kaneki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll now move into our cases. I'll go over the procedures very briefly. The Architectural Review Board is responsible for review of construction and modification or alteration to any site in the review district or area subject to architectural review under the provision of Zoning Code Section 153.170. The board has the decision-making responsibility on these cases. A swearing in of anyone who attends to address the board on any of these cases is necessary. The agenda order is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. There are no cases eligible for our consent agenda tonight. All right, we're going to swear in the witnesses now. Anyone who is intending to address the board on cases this evening, raise your right hand and please unmute and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to the board this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, our first case is an informal review. It's for 37 West Bridge Street. This application is a request for informal review and feedback for the historic modifications to a historic structure located on a 0.22 acre site zoned Historic District Historic Core. The site is southwest of the intersection of West Bridge Street with Mill Lane. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter, and so Chase, we are ready whenever you are.
Okay, great, thank you. So as was mentioned, this is a request for informal review, providing non-binding feedback for proposed exterior modifications to the site located at 37 West Bridge Street. The site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. As was mentioned, it is an approximately 0.2 acre site and is located southwest of the intersection of West Bridge Street with Mill Lane. This zoomed in version of the same aerial gives you a bit of context to the existing conditions of the site. On the north end of the site, there is an existing concrete patio. The historic firehouse portion of the structure is located centrally on the site with a 2-story addition at the rear of the building. Excuse me. These photos give a bit of context to the existing conditions of the site. So on the left is the firehouse building as viewed from West Bridge Street. You'll notice a brick paver sidewalk leading from the existing concrete patio to the sidewalk along West Bridge Street. There are 2 stone walls immediately adjacent to the concrete patio, and then the building in the background. You'll notice the existing storefront consists of a large trim piece over either storefront system. And then on the right is the view from Mill Lane, a portion of the building at least. And so here you can see the 2-story addition, which is at the rear of the property, and then the 1-story portion at the northern end of the site. So this is the proposed site plan. To kind of explain the brown box here, the applicant provided a site plan that really outlines the scope of the project, and in this case, it's primarily making modifications to the north side of the site. And so the building is outlined in that brown box and actually continues off the screen. So what you're seeing here is the northern portion of the building and then the concrete patio as it exists today. The applicant is proposing a new wrought iron fence to enclose this patio space, but really the rest of the site remains largely unchanged. As was mentioned, there are a couple of stone walls immediately adjacent to that concrete patio. So with a future formal application, we would want to see those indicated on the site plan. Also with a future formal application, should the ARB be supportive of the wrought iron fence, fence details including height, manufacturer, and design will be required at a future date. And this blue box outlines the concrete patio. I apologize. So this is the proposed north elevation. A number of modifications are proposed that can be seen on this elevation. So this includes a new storefront system. You'll notice that the large trim pieces above the storefront on the existing storefront are going to be removed, and the applicant is proposing a full length from established grade to the top of the opening there, a new storefront system, and that'll be proposed to be painted black. And the applicant is also proposing a double door entry, which has a gridded pattern to match that the rest of the storefront system. In the background, you'll see the 2-story portion, which is painted a brown color. It's a sawdust color. And what you're not seeing on this elevation, but you'll see in a future slide, is the wrought iron fence would actually be visible, kind of outlining and framing this view. This is the proposed south elevation. So what you're seeing here is a number of trim details. This includes a wood trim detail around the existing windows, as well as a trim divider between the first and second floor. And then again, this portion of the building will be painted that sawdust color. On this elevation, you'll begin to see the new replacement awnings, which are proposed to be a Sunbrella brand fade-resistant color material in a black color. The storefront in this area will also be painted black to match the awnings in the storefront on the north end of the building. And again, the exterior of the building will be painted that sawdust color. And then on the right side of your screen, you can see the proposed wrought iron fence. So again, additional details will be required should that be included with a formal application. And then the west elevation is really seeing the fewest modifications. Again, you'll see here window trim proposed around the existing windows. The trim divider between the first and second stories is visible on this elevation. And then again, the applicant is proposing to paint the two-story portion of this building in that sawdust color. And so with that, we do have a number of discussion questions for the board to consider. One, is the board supportive of the storefront modifications? So removing the trim, the new storefront system, the double door entry. Is the board supportive of the proposed trim details, so window trim as well as the trim divider piece? Number 3, is the board supportive of the proposed awnings, awning colors, and proposed paint colors? And then, of course, any other considerations by the board. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also in attendance this evening. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Chase? All right, is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here, Beth Reel.
Would you like to add anything to Chase's presentation?
The only thing I would say is that the front storefront is trying to capitalize on the previous use of the building, which was a firehouse. So the intent of the storefront is to kind of mimic a overhead door, so to speak. This will not be an overhead door, but it'll just be a storefront to mimic overhead door.
Okay. Well, we can open it up for our questions of both the applicant and Chase. Board members, do you have any initial questions?
I'd maybe just have one clarification from maybe, I don't know if it's Chase or Ms. Reel. What's the fence for? I'm just trying to get contextual of what's the fence trying to improve or keep out, or what is it going to be there for?
It is just a decorative feature to make it appealing to a future tenant.
Okay, to enclose so that they would have a more private, probably that's not the right word, but a more enclosed space that they could go to and use as just some open space.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's not any functional, it's just decorative. And it
Okay.
is open on the one side, and then there would be like a slight gate to get you out to that brick paver pad or a brick paver wall out
Yep.
to the sidewalk.
Okay. And then the stone wall, is it foreseen it will stay?
Yes.
Okay.
And can you explain a little bit in relationship to the stone wall, how the fence will be positioned?
Unfortunately, those details haven't been worked out entirely yet. We would foresee being installed behind the stone wall. So closer to the building side. It would not be in front of the stone wall. It would be behind the stone wall.
At what height?
We were thinking 3 feet.
And you're planning a gate at the paver area,
Yes.
and also you're proposing a gate on the side?
No, it would just remain open.
Say that again. What will remain open?
There's a side entrance to the patio, and there won't be a gate there. It'll just,
Okay, just be okay. There won't be. Okay, I have you. Okay.
I think the preliminary drawings reflected that, as I recall.
Yes.
Amy, do you have anything? Any clar-
I don't have any I don't have questions.
Okay, I have just a couple before we start talking about the shape of the existing awnings. Is pretty distinctive shape. It's hard to tell from those drawings. Your existing awnings both bow up, which mimics the arch shape, which probably follows the arch shape, but they also bow out. Are these awnings going to be the same shape as those awnings?
Yes, they will
Okay.
follow the same frame. They're just getting new material.
Okay, so it's the same frame. The other question I had, and this is a technical question, and I may have more to say about this later, but how do you intend to secure the wood trim to the existing concrete block?
Well, I imagine it would be Tapconned in and then the trim would be filled in.
Okay,
I'm not 100% sure on that detail yet. We wanted to see if you guys approve it.
all right. Well, we may have more to say about that in a moment.
Okay.
So
Are there any?
just want to maybe, so you're going to frame those back windows with, oops, I'm going the wrong way. You'll frame them in trim, because right now they're vinyl windows, I think it looks like. So
There's really no trim around them at all. The
Yep.
block just kind of goes. There's a limestone, I think, sill,
still, yeah. Okay.
and that's it. So we're just trying to create a little more architectural interest in the back of the building.
Chase, did we have any public comment regarding this?
There's no public comment on this one.
Okay, all right. So now it's our turn to deliberate and ask more questions, provide some feedback. Amy, it sounded like you were, you have some things you wanted to say.
Actually, I would say regarding the storefront modifications, I'm totally fine with returning them to look more like what it used to as the old firehouse that I remember. So I like the storefront. I was kind of iffy on the trim because, as Gary mentioned, you don't typically adhere wood trim to cinder block, particularly after the fact, like based on the relief of where that window is. So I'd be interested in the finishing details of that if you brought it back. I mean, I'm okay with the overall look and adding the trim. The concrete block building is not a historic component that I'm highly concerned with. I would just want to see the details of how you were attaching that. The awning, I was totally fine with changing the fabric on the awning. The colors I was totally fine with. And I'm okay with the fence too. Those stone walls are not historic old stone walls from the district. They were actually recreated when the drive was taken out. And that building was no longer a fire station. So yeah, putting a fence around that patio, I would be okay with.
How about other board members, your feelings?
So I can go, yeah, for me, the front is okay. I actually had to go back and look what old firehouses looked like back in the 40s. And for me, it actually mimics better. Okay, I looked them up from Buffalo and other places. So for me, I think the front is fine. I found most of the firehouses were more white and red and other colors than black, but for me, the color it would look good against the gray. So I think that for me is okay. Awnings were okay. The fence, I'm not opposed, but somehow when I looked at that, I know that the stone wall is not historic, but it just felt like it'd be, if the stone wall was a little more fence height and the wrought iron fence came out to it, it would, okay, since the stone fence is still there, to utilize it as the front fence felt like it would somehow be better. But again, I don't see any issue with the fence. It feels a little out of place just the way it's gonna go across there, but it looks okay the way it's open. And I had the same about the trim in the back. For me, when you put it on there, it just, how do you keep it from having water behind it and weathering and just how will it look over the course of time. I mean, I have to say, it's nondescript in the back, but I'm not sure adding wood trim to that back portion. I don't know if it will make it, I'm not sure it will make it better. It was kind of hard to visualize what that would look like after a few years of being back there. But otherwise, I think I like the front. I think the repainting is good. The fence, the fence sitting in front of that. I mean, from I think the last time I was there for me, it's okay because it's open. But the wood, having the stone fence be the front, feels like it could be more interesting.
Frank, Marty?
I had nothing else to add, just that be interested to see the details on the garage door, especially with the door inside the door, the man door going inside what was the old garage door. I think it's a neat idea and it could be a very neat touch. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that drawing comes out. Otherwise, everything else was covered.
Okay.
I guess I have a question just on the positioning of the proposed wrought iron fence, again, with respect to the stone fence, because I think I agree with Sean that I'm not sure I would like how it's going to look across the front if it's crowding up on that stone fence. But I guess I would like to see a rendering of how close that's going to sit. I have a question though about the windows you're proposing, just to add the awnings, the new awnings. There isn't, and please bear with me, I've been scrambling to get prepared for tonight, but is there something proposed to the window frames themselves?
Ms. Reed?
Which window frames?
Like on the back of the house, the back of the structure?
It was just adding the trim on the outside of the windows.
And does that trim go all the way around them? Because currently they're very plain with like a cement windowsill at the bottom.
Correct. They would go on 3 sides and meet up with that sill that's there.
And I saw that one of the sills is damaged. Are you planning to repair that, replace that one, or in the?
We would investigate that for sure.
I would be interested in what the other board members' thoughts are about adding the trim around these windows versus leaving them plain.
I was just going to address that. I will tell you what my thoughts are. I agree with Sean's comment because my concern is you typically don't surface mount, and Amy said the same thing. You typically don't surface mount a trim to block, particularly after the fact, because you can't flash the top. So you can't prevent water from getting back there. So I just worry that after a very short period of time, the boards are going to start cupping, and the appearance of that may really suffer. I think there's an easier solution to get some more detail around those windows. One of the things that's not shown on your drawings, Ms. Reel, is every one of those windows has a precast concrete lintel that spans the window. It's 8 inches tall. It's the same height as the block, but it's continuous across each of those windows. You could simply paint those lintels. So just as your sills stand out now, your lintels would stand out visually, and you'd simply be articulating one of the elements around the window. So it would give you some visual interest, but I think it would, it may accomplish what you want in a simpler way. And additionally, your trim may look a little awkward if it's cutting off this lintel halfway up. So you already have a lintel spanning that opening. So, I have some concerns about the trim, and I think I agree with the questions about the relationship of the wall to the fence, and if they both stay, should they be so close to one another? Do you understand our, Ms. Reel, do you understand our comments and have any additional questions for us?
I do not, and I would, I thank you very much for all your comments and feedback. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing you again. Our next case is case number 2, the Begley residence at 6199 Dublin Road. It's a minor project review. This application's request for the construction of an addition and associated site improvements for a single-family residence on a 1.32 acre site zoned limited suburban residential district. The site is southwest of the intersection of Dublin Road with Short Street. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter. So Chase, whenever you're ready, let us know.
I would like to say something if I could.
Sure.
Just full disclosure, we had the Begley residence before the Board of Zoning Appeals and granted a variance to that property, which is part of the record that Chase has here. But I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention because I was a member of that Board of Zoning Appeals at the time that variance was sought.
I appreciate that. Do you feel comfortable voting on this?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right. But thanks for letting us know, Marty. Okay, Chase.
Great, thank you. Just give me a moment to get this up for you all. All right, so as was mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of a minor project review for the proposed addition to an existing single-family home in the historic district, as well as a detached garage. So the site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. It is on the west side of Dublin Road, southwest of the intersection with Short Street. The site is approximately 1.3 acres in size and is zoned R2 limited suburban residential district. So just a bit of background on the zoning. This is a unique case in that it is not a historic district, zone district. So with the R2 zoning district, you have, a different set of development standards. So some of those are listed here and include a minimum 8-foot side yard setback with a 20-foot side yard sum, a rear yard setback of 20% of the lot depth up to 50 feet, and a lot coverage of 45%. So I'll get into more detail on those as we progress in the presentation, but the applicant or the proposal is easily meeting all of those requirements. So for a bit of surrounding context, numbers 1 and 2 indicated on the map are shown on the right-hand side of your screen. Number 1 is the car barn, and number 2 is another single-family home on the east side of Dublin Road. And these photos provide a bit of context to the existing conditions of the site. As you can see, there is an existing 2-story single-family home on the site. The site rather is heavily wooded with mature trees, and it does have a number of existing patios on the site. So before you use the proposed site plan, as I had mentioned, there is a proposed addition to the north end of the home, indicated by this first blue box on the right-hand side of the site plan here, as well as a detached garage indicated by the blue box on the left-hand side of the site plan. There are also a number of expanded or new covered decks, which I'll get into more detail on as we progress in the presentation here. As I had mentioned, the applicant, or sorry, the proposal is well below the required lot coverage maximum and is easily meeting setbacks as well. With this, and as Ms. Cooper had alluded to, the detached garage is proposed to be constructed forward of the primary structure, which did require a variance. And that variance was approved at the March BZA meeting. So that permits that detached garage to be built forward of the primary structure. Additionally, there is a waiver that is required for parking. So that is not outlined in your staff report. It is something that was caught recently after the staff report was published. So I'll get into a bit more detail about that as well. But you'll see there has been a waiver added to the end of the presentation here. So what you see here is the existing and proposed elevation in the east elevation specifically. So again, there's an existing two-story single-family home. The applicant is proposing to add on to that existing structure, primarily to the north side. So you can see on the right-hand side of your screen that addition. It is proposed to be a single-story addition connected to the two-story existing structure via a hyphen connector. Excuse me. The addition is proposed to be clad in a combination of shake siding as well as board and batten to match the existing conditions of the existing structure. And the applicant is proposing windows and a pattern to match what exists today. You'll also notice on the far left hand side of your screen on the proposed elevation, there is a new covered deck, and you'll see that same condition on the far right hand side as the applicant is proposing a covered deck on the north end of the addition. What you see now is the west elevation, so again, existing on the top. On the left-hand side of the proposed elevation, you can see that addition now presents as a two-story addition, given the change in grade from east to west on the site. There are a number of windows proposed on the addition, again, in a pattern to match the most of the windows on the existing portion of the structure. Excuse me. On the right-hand side of the proposed elevation, you'll notice that covered deck wraps around to this elevation from the south elevation. And that is, the roof is sheathed in a standing seam metal roofing material. So what you see here is the north elevation existing on the left and proposed on the right. Here you get a good view of the addition as a side gable form, expanding to the north of the north side of the site. The proposed covered deck frames two new pedestrian entries on this elevation, and you'll notice a number of new windows as well, again to match the existing window patterns. Also visible on this elevation is the railing. So you'll notice that on the addition as well as on the existing portion of the home, the applicant is proposing a new railing system. It is a TimberTech decking and railing system, which has been included in your materials packet. And then south elevation is shown on your screen now. And so again, you'll see the covered deck on this elevation, as well as a covered porch, which frames the front entry of the home. And then also on the right side of your screen, you'll notice the detached garage, which is proposed to be south of the home. And then these are some additional details on that proposed detached garage. It is a single-story detached garage. It will have 3 single-car bays. and is approximately 16 feet in height, where accessory structures are required to be 18 feet or less. So it meets that requirement. And you'll notice in the south elevation that it is pretty well integrated into the hillside, given the change of grade from east to west. So from Dublin Road, it'll actually largely be kind of camouflaged into the hillside there. So this detached garage is proposed to be clad in a board and batten to match the existing conditions of the home. And there is a window proposed on the south elevation of the detached garage. So there are a number of waivers requested with this application. The first one being to the window type. So the applicant is proposing an extruded aluminum casement window. And this is, the request is coming specifically so that they can match what exists today. There's also a waiver to the roof pitch requirement. So roof pitches are required to be between 612 and 1212. There are portions of the roof, specifically on the covered decks, that are at 1225. So pretty close to that 612 requirement, but just outside of. And then this is the waiver that I had alluded to earlier, that is an addition and not in your staff report. So this waiver is to allow a 3-car garage where 2 parking spaces, minimum and maximum, are required. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that that you all may have. And then this minor project was reviewed against all applicable criteria. And again, staff is recommending approval of 3 waivers this evening, as well as approval of a minor project review with 2 conditions. The first one being that the applicant replace the existing pedestrian door immediately north of the attached garage with a door that matches the other pedestrian doors, just for continuity's sake. And then that the applicant work with staff to select appropriate lighting fixtures, as those were not provided for staff review. And that would be subject to staff approval. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, and the applicant is also in attendance tonight.
Any questions for Chase?
Chase, can you put a side view drawing back up for us?
I can, give me one moment. And Ms. Cooper, to clarify, which side specifically?
Looking north. Thank you. And can you kind of highlight where the door is you want to be noted for as a condition to be matching?
Certainly. So that is actually, I apologize, let me get there. That is on this elevation, and if you can see my cursor, it's this door just north of the existing 2-car garage. All the others are going to be either new or replaced. This one remains unchanged, and so for continuity's sake, we just recommend that that be in line with the other pedestrian doors.
Okay, thank you.
Chase, I had 2 questions, and I'll say I have 3. I'll say one for the applicant. I think there may be a typo in some of the documents, and since this is a part of the record, I think we want to get it right. The roof slope is 2.512, and I think our documents refer to it as 1225, but I think the architectural drawings and the typical way show 2.512, and the way you would typically refer to it would be that. So it's probably just a typo. Information that was included in the packet for Sierra Pacific. So maybe there are 2 kinds of windows here, because some of the information in that packet was showing what we call cut sheets for a wood window, structurally wood, that's clad with extruded aluminum. So I just, and maybe the applicant can clarify that for us. But when I looked at the report and said extruded aluminum windows, and saw that the piece from Sierra Pacific, I'm a little confused. So maybe, and maybe that's a question too, for either Ms. Begley or Mr. Stock in the next. But do you know offhand?
That potentially could have been an oversight on my part, so I apologize. I would ask that Mr. Stock provide additional clarification if possible.
Okay, well.
Can you hear us?
Yes,
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, if you want, and you can, please feel free to, please answer those, but anything else you think we should know about your presentation tonight?
Thank you. Okay.
Hey, Chase, can you go to sheet 10?
Yeah, and are you referring to the material or the
window?
plan set?
Yeah, sheet 10 that shows the window detail.
Okay, yeah, give me one moment. I'll have to pull that up on the network. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes. Yeah, we were hoping to do the casing around the window in wood to the 2 5/8 inch to be consistent to the other windows in the house. So only the window unit itself will be the clad window.
And Dave, to clarify for the non-architects on our board, by clad, you mean it's structurally wood with the extruded aluminum on the outside. Is that correct?
Yes, the window
Okay.
itself.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Mr. Stock or Ms. Begley, do you want to add anything to the presentation? You've seen the conditions that the staff has recommended that we pass the project with. Do you have concerns about any of those?
I guess any other issues besides that? I heard the door to the left of the existing garage, which we are fine with replacing and making it work with. It needs replaced anyway, so we are good with that. Is there anything I'm missing that you want us to change?
Chase, was there anything else on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. I was trying to get this slide back up, but yeah, Lori, the only other item was the lighting item. So just working with us to select an appropriate lighting fixture for the home itself, as well as for the detached garage.
Okay. Any advice on that? We were looking at gas lighting type of lanterns, but we hadn't gotten that far.
I think the staff is probably open to a number of options. I think they just want the opportunity to review what you ultimately propose.
Yes, and we can do that.
Yeah, we're pretty open too. I mean, our only thing was we were thinking like gas lanterns similar to Old Dublin, but we're pretty open. We don't have specifics on. We're very willing to work with you guys on that.
Okay. Board members, questions, comments? This is our time for discussion.
Just a quick question. It's not a killer for me or anything, but Chase, if you can bring up the east elevation. I know it's I'm running Chase through the ringer here.
Yeah, give me one moment.
Sure. There you go. Just it was a quick question, I guess, maybe for the architect, and maybe an interior reason for this is just that you go from a lot of windows with sets of threes, and you change the one that's existing in what will be the exact middle of the house to a set of four. And I was just wondering what the thought was behind changing that from a 3 to a 4 set.
We did that to balance it. Maybe it looked a little bit solid. The existing facade looks a little bit solid. So we just, to up the proportion and the scale of the window, we just added one window.
Okay, gotcha.
And any other questions or comments?
I'll just say I like the revision from last, like I like this version better than last time, how you moved the patio and everything to the north side. So I appreciate that. I like the new design. I don't have any issues with the waiver to make sure the windows match what they've got, and I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question regarding the waiver. Now that this type of window is a window that our guidelines suggest using, a wood-clad window, is the waiver still needed?
I don't believe at this point it is, and maybe Nikki, if you can provide some insight or any additional thoughts.
Yeah, no, we would not require a waiver as their meeting code.
I have one question about the railing. The image in the packet was an image from Howes, and then one of the, which I thought would be very appropriate, but one of the documents said the actual railing style and type was still being sorted out. And then Chase, you mentioned it was going to be a TimberTech product for the railing. So could either Mr. Stock or Ms. Bagley help me out there?
We would like it to be a metal rail. And we're looking into a aluminum and maybe even a solid aluminum for maintenance and less rusting. So we're still looking into options, but it'll be a metal detail.
TimberTech is our decking, not the rail.
I'm glad to hear that, because TimberTech's decking system sometimes has some really massive posts.
Yes, not looking at TimberTech for rails.
Could we make this a condition that staff will review and make sure it's an appropriate railing system? Board members, how do you feel about that? Because there is a lot of railing.
I'm okay. I mean, for me, when I was looking at it, it looked like it was going to be metal. So for me, if it was something else, then you certainly wouldn't want, you wouldn't want it to look out of place. But
well, we could also say it matches the image, that it matches or is close to the image that they provided in the packet.
Right.
Yeah, and Mr. Alexander, if I may, that was a misstep on my end. The decking portion will be TimberTech. The railing is not a TimberTech product, so you're correct in that analysis.
Okay, help me out here, board members. Do you think we have enough to approve the railing with what's in the packet?
I think, honestly, I can't remember if the packet said it was metal, but as long as somewhere it says that it's going to be a metal fence, I'm good. If it's not clearly in the packet that it's metal, then yeah, let's just put a condition that says they'll work with staff to ensure it's the appropriate metal fence that's shown in the pictures.
I see a hand raised.
At this point, I would prefer that we condition it.
Well, it looks like
Sure.
we have, when we sent the stuff into you, but it does look like we have metal railing specific when we sent all of our information to you.
It's number 7 on the list.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I think just for clarity's sake and for the record, we'll go ahead and condition it that it be metal as identified in the submittal. We won't make it subject to staff approval. But just for the sake of clarity, I think at this point makes sense.
Maybe just a sake of clarity for me, because in the exterior materials, it says metal railing. So just so we don't, I mean, because I don't want to get to the point where you have to say, we want to be clear that it's board and bat. Just not to over clarify things, right? Because the exterior materials is new metal railing.
Oh, well, if you're comfortable with it, I brought it up because when I looked at the drawings initially, the handrail is pretty bold. And I know the drawings are done frequently before selections are made, and that's understandable. But what's shown in the packet, which I think is very nice, is a much narrower profile top rail that I think would look great with the house. I just want to make sure and I think if Mr. Stock's involved, it's not going to be inappropriate, but I think we need to treat everybody the same way.
I think Sean was right. It's on the very first page on that table of exterior materials. It does specifically say new metal railing black.
Yep.
So I think it's covered.
Okay.
I do too. Yep.
Okay, then we won't. All right, we won't put it as a condition. All right. Is there any other? So you probably have to slightly revise. Well, you have to take the one waiver out. So if there's no, did we have any public comment about this? I'm sorry. Kate, Chase, was there any public comment?
There's no public comment on this one.
Okay, all right. So we can go ahead, I think, and first work through the waivers.
We need to prove each one of those individually. Is that correct? Or can it be one approval with the waivers? How do we do that?
Typically, we would approve them individually.
Okay. Yep.
As one could fail and one could pass.
Okay. So we want to start with the waivers. So I'll move to approve a waiver to the roof pitch to allow on this one, Gary. I'm not sure. Is it 1225 or should it be something else?
It should be 2.512.
2.512. Okay.
I apologize. Let me fix that really quickly.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve a waiver to allow a roof pitch of 2.512 for the indicated portions of the roof over the decking.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, Amy second.
Mr.
And then I can make, oh, do we have to vote on each one? Sorry.
Want me to proceed or you want to?
I
No,
think
go ahead.
Nikki indicated we probably need to vote on each one separately.
Right.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes?
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Marty, you may be on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I will make the, what's the proper word, Carrie? Slipped my mind. To vote on the waiver for the 3-car detached garage to approve that waiver.
I'll second.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. Okay, now I think we move on to vote on the project with the conditions.
I can move to approve the minor project with the two stated conditions in the report.
And I can second.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes?
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for working with us and responding to some of the comments that were made earlier. Okay. Our last case this evening is the Beckert residence at 156 South High Street. This is a minor project review. The application is a request for the construction of a two-story single-family residence on a 0.24 acre site zoned historic district, historic residential. The site is east of South High Street, approximately 100 feet south of the intersection of John Wright Lane. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter, and we are ready when you are, Chase.
Great, thank you. Again, just give me one moment to get this up. Okay, so as was mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of a minor project review for the construction of a new single-family home in the historic district. The site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. You all are likely familiar with the site at this point. It is located on the east side of South High Street, southeast of the intersection with John Wright Lane. These photos provide a bit of context to the surrounding properties. Numbers 1 and 2 are on the west side of South High Street. 3 is immediately north of the site, and 4 is immediately south of the site. 4 is a new construction single-family home recently approved by the Architectural Review Board. And you'll notice there is a variety of styles amongst these 4 properties, which all range in height from 1.5 to 2 stories. So these are photos showing the existing conditions of the site. As was mentioned, that single-family home at 158 South High Street is under construction, so you'll see that on the right-hand side of these photos. But the site in question is currently undeveloped as the previous property was demolished. And so for a bit of history, you all likely recall that this has been before you as an informal review twice. So in October of 2020 and then December of last year as well. So the board was supportive of the site layout and appreciated the open rear yard. The ARB was generally supportive of a 2-story home, however, did have some concerns with the scale and height. The board recommended that the applicant refer to nearby homes for comparable heights. And appreciated the simplification of elevations from the October iteration. So the applicant has continued to work with staff to address those items. This is the proposed site plan. So this site is required a minimum rear yard setback of 4 feet and a sum of 12 feet. So the proposal meets that requirement. It is also required a rear yard setback of 20% of the lot depth. In this case, that is approximately 35 feet, and the proposal well exceeds that. The front yard setback for this portion of South High Street is 15 feet from the public right-of-way. In this case, the applicant is proposing that the home be set back approximately 23.5 feet. Lot coverage for the zoning district is limited to 45%. As proposed, they are at 44%, so meeting that requirement. Building coverage is required to be 25% or less, and in this case, they are at the 25% mark. This one, much like the previous case, is required a waiver for parking. They are proposing a 3-car garage, whereas a maximum of 2 parking spaces is permitted. So a very similar situation to the previous case. This is the proposed west elevation. So you'll notice it is a full 2-story mass. The height has been reduced to approximately 23 feet 8 inches, as measured from established grade to the midpoint of the eaves, which is how height is measured per code. You'll notice there are a series of 2/2 windows on this elevation, and the applicant is proposing a custom panel, wood panel door. This elevation is clad in a combination of a limestone product and a beige alpaca finish, as well as a hardy panel, straight line hardy panel siding in a china white finish. The roof is primarily sheathed in a dimension asphalt shingle in a Georgetown gray color, and the portion above the covered front porch is a metal standing seam roof in a charcoal gray. This is the proposed north elevation. So this elevation really consists of 2 north-south oriented masses and an east-west oriented mass. The north elevation, you'll notice the 2-car bay and 1-car bay for a total of 3 cars parked on the rear of the home. You'll also notice a front porch on the the right side of your screen, which would be on the west-facing elevation, and there is a rear deck, elevated deck proposed for the rear of the home. So the applicant has worked with staff to further simplify the application of windows, better aligning these windows across this elevation. Staff is recommending, as outlined in the staff report, that the applicant continue to work with us on simplifying the stone water table. Staff has identified a few areas where this could be simplified on this elevation, and then others as well. Staff also recommends that the plans be revised to remove the proposed cupola on the rear portion of the home, as it artificially increases the height or perceived height on the rear portion of the home. Staff is also recommending that in order to further simplify this elevation and others on the home, that the applicant revise the plans to remove the roof returns on the gable ends. And then this is a color version of that same elevation. One thing I did want to point out is that this previous elevation you just saw has a stone water table wrapping around to the rear. The color elevation is exactly the same, except that it's missing that stone water table. But this will give you an idea of kind of the color palette and how that's applied to this elevation. And the proposed east elevation, so this is the rear of the home that you're seeing now. You'll notice the front gable form that forms the rear portion of the home is prominent on this elevation. The same combination of materials is found on this elevation as on the other 3 elevations. So that includes the straight line hardy panel, board and batten, and the stone water table. And on this elevation too, you'll notice the large elevated deck at the rear of the home. And this is the proposed south elevation. So again, many of those same elements apply on that on this elevation as on the others. It is clad in the same materials. In this elevation, much like the north elevation, is formed via 2 gable forms, north-south oriented gable forms, and an east-west gable form. On this elevation too, you'll notice the 2-story chimney. The staff is recommending that the applicant continue to work with us on that, specifically the chimney flue, to select an appropriate chimney flue, as that detail simply just wasn't provided by the applicant. So just recommending that they continue to work with us on selecting an appropriate one. And then just running through some of the proposed materials, I had mentioned China white paint will be the primary paint color on the home. So this is from Benjamin Moore, and you'll find this on the Hardy panel siding, the board and batten, as well as on some of the trim details and doorway details. The applicant is also proposing a dimensioned asphalt shingle in a Georgetown gray and a limestone for the stone water table and the alpaca finish. Additionally, a number of lighting fixtures are proposed for the doorways. So you'll see the larger lighting fixture on the left is proposed for the front entry, and the one on the right for the other pedestrian entries on the home. The decking is proposed to be a TimberTech decking. The actual flooring material will be in an ashwood finish, and then the railing will be a traditional design and a white finish. And so, as was mentioned, this one also requires a waiver to the parking requirement, which staff is supportive of, and the minor project was reviewed against all applicable criteria. Staff is also recommending approval of the minor project review with 5 conditions as outlined below. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, and the applicant is also in attendance this evening. Thank you.
Chase, thanks for the presentation. It's very, very thorough. Board members, do any of you have questions for Chase? I'll ask just one question then. I thought I understood from the documents that the cupola takes that roof beyond the allowable roof height in that location. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, thanks. I know there are other issues, but I just wanted to clarify that, okay, that it breaks the height cap. Okay, Mr. Beckert or Mr. Carr, would you like to present the project? Are there things that you think we're missing that we should hear?
No, I think, thank you all, Chase and Nicole especially, for their efforts, and really appreciate, like you said, Mr. Alexander, the detail they provided. It gave us a good history, good context. We've always been, my wife Amy and I, excited about the opportunity to move into the community, and certainly know that we're all working together to try to find something that works for everybody. And from our viewpoint, after reading the report, we're certainly amenable to the conditions put forth, with the exception of our beloved cupola, but so be it, if that's the case. But yeah, no, we're excited, and I think everything that has been presented from our perspective is we'd be more than happy to continue to work with the staff to get this moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I know we had 3 letters that were very supportive of the project in our packet. Do any of the board members feel those need to be read into the record? They're a part of our document.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're in the documents already, so, right.
and they were neighbors, and they were all very supportive. So have we had any public comments, other public comments submitted about the project?
We've not received any public comments.
Okay. All right, board members, it's our opportunity to discuss this. Feelings about where we stand now in the project.
So, I mean, I can start, certainly for me, I think that the architects and the homeowners have done a nice job to take all of our constructive support to get it a good, bring it back, changing the height in the front. Okay, from a rendering, it's still difficult to see how it'll exactly fit, but now seeing it at the height it is from where it was 4 or 5 months ago, I think it's certainly a really good improvement, simplifying the things that were done there. So overall, I think the team on their side did a nice job and really accounted for some of the challenges or some of the issues that I had from the original. So I don't really have any other comment. I think they've done a good job.
Okay. Sean, Amy, Marty, your feelings?
I can go. Again, I appreciate the bringing the height down. I've been adamant from the beginning to not have the cupola, so I'd like, I'm glad that's still a condition and we'll see that gone. I agree with the need to revise the level of stone, whereas in some places the stone is more used as a cladding and goes halfway up the facade, and then other places it's more trying to replicate a foundation or a water table. So I think if we can balance that out as the condition says, I'm confident staff can work that out. I'm okay with that. The conditions were fine for me. The only concern I had on the materials was I didn't really care for the railing that was being chose. Like, to me, it says composite. It kind of looks like a vinyl or plastic type material. I think it'd be better that if it looked more like wood. I don't know what that is. But otherwise, yeah, with the conditions, I'm okay with this now.
Frank or Marty?
Sure, I could jump in. I think it looks great, actually. There's the conditions that mentioned. We don't need to go over those, and otherwise, I think it's come along swimmingly. I think it looks like a very nice house, especially the front. I think that's always important. Now it faces its main street, and I think it would fit in.
Marty? We've all seen this 3 times, so maybe this is unfair to ask you, but you might be on mute because I'm not able to hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying that having read the staff report, I can see that a lot of detail and thought have been put into this project, and clearly you have had a lot of firsthand experience with it. So I don't have any additional questions or comments at this time.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I feel the same way board members do. The only point I might qualify is I actually like the stone stepping up on the front elevation. I realize it's different than, I would appreciate a continuous water table, but the stone that steps up to a half story helps break that part of the elevation down into 2 smaller pieces. And I think the color change too between the stone and the siding helps diminish the mass. So I think it's valuable there in the way you've used it. And even if this board were to approve your cupola, you would still need a zoning variance. And one of the issues with a zoning variance is proving a hardship or unusual condition that's out of your control. And so you may have a difficult, I have a feeling you're not going to get support here, and you may have a difficulty getting support on another board too. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Gary. I think we'll cut our losses. We'll go ahead and move on.
Okay. If there are no further comments, I think, Chase, if you want to put the document up, and I think we're all ready to vote on it.
So we have to approve the waiver first.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I can make the first motion to approve the waiver for parking.
I'll second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram.
Yes.
All right, now to vote on the approval of the minor project review with the 5 conditions.
Can we make a motion to approve them all 5 conditions at once, or do I have to do each one separately?
I think we can do that as one lump.
One lump?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Then I can make that motion to approve the minor project review, the 5 steps, I guess you can call it.
I if I may interrupt, I do have a question. It kind of follows up on Amy's comment. So is the railing going to be a composite, and is that a problem with our rules? Because we had some discussion about that on the last property, and where they're using TimberTech for the deck and then a metal railing. But I was just questioning whether that was an observation or part of a condition for the project on the composite railing.
It sounds like there are a couple questions there, and maybe Chase and Nikki can respond to what our rules will permit there. And then we can go back and revisit the condition.
Certainly. So I apologize for the confusion on the railing issues this evening, but composite decking materials are permitted, and so that would include railing materials.
Okay.
And additionally, the ARB has in the past approved the TimberTech material. So in this case, the applicant is proposing a TimberTech decking as well as a TimberTech railing, and kind of a traditional aesthetic.
Okay, so it was an observation, but it wasn't a requirement under our rules, because the rules do authorize the rail to be in the composite or TimberTech product.
Nikki, I saw your hand up. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just one additional consideration just for a bit of context. When this proposal initially came to staff and the Architectural Review Board, it did have a more modern, low-profile railing, but through the design process, we had requested something, more traditional in nature, given this architectural character.
And to add to that, Marty, my comment on the prior case about the TimberTech was strictly stylistic, because this home, the previous home, was a more contemporary home. A really massive post, I thought, would be inappropriate with the design aesthetic, whereas this stylistically is a different home. So I don't have objections to the style of post that TimberTech would provide. But I want to ask Amy, because these projects have a lot of gloss. I mean, these products have a lot of gloss, and if she thinks we should change the condition, add a condition here.
It's not going to hold up the project. I just don't, to me, from a distance, it's going to look like they have a plastic fence on their deck. And because you're right, because of the gloss and the shine, and it's going to look like a vinyl fence, which I don't find appropriate. I think it should look like wood as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not going to kill the project. It's at the back of the house. It's not going to be as noticeable. That's just my preference, that it would, I don't know if they can buy the product in a matte finish, that would make it not as vinyl looking. But again, that's just my personal preference.
Yeah, and it would also draw people's eye to it. It would actually detract from your own house, having something that shiny. So I'm with Amy. I'm not going to obviously vote it down just for that, because it is in the back, but it is something just to think about.
Okay.
Is there support to change the condition? Sean? Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. Maybe the applicant, does the product have a different finish that might help it look more like wood?
Yeah, not that I know of off the top of my head, but it's what you all have stated. Certainly, is something that we'll keep in mind as we, if we can find an alternative, great. I just don't know what other options exist. So it's kind of hard to answer that question, but your points are well taken. Yeah.
I saw your architect flash on the screen. I don't know if Mr. Carr wants to add something to this.
Yeah, I completely agree that I would want a more of a matte finish and to look like wood. So I will work with Bob to make sure that happens and the owner.
Okay,
I can even specify it on the plans.
okay, all right.
The materials may have an option for something that's other than a smooth finish, like as an example, blinds and shutters sometimes do. So
Got a brochure there.
Bob might have the answer.
All right.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah, TimberTech's got a wide range. I think that was the starting point, similar to what we did next door, possibly, but different version. But there's a ton of options we can choose from and work with staff on that'll get you closer to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I just think it would look more attractive than
Yeah, totally agree.
than a vinyl looking fence.
Yes, absolutely.
Do board members, you feel like we need to add some language in?
I don't think we actually need to add the language to it. I think everyone agrees they do not want to make it look cheap.
Right.
Not cheap house to have that fence wrapped around and attracting your eye.
I'm not sure how he puts that on the permit drawing.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. You architects work that out.
We will hold you to your.
don't be cheap.
Don't be cheap.
All right. So it sounds like all of us are fine, that board and applicants, with the proposed language that we're going to vote on. So is there a motion to approve this?
Sure, I can make a motion to approve the 5 points of the minor project review.
Okay. Thanks, Frank.
I'll second.
Thanks, Amy. Okay.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Cram.
Yes.
Thank you. You're approved. Finally. But thanks for working with us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the okay. Did we? I hear we've had a lot of conversation on that last one. I just want to verify, because I didn't take a note, that we voted on the waiver.
Yes, we did vote on the waiver.
Okay, thanks.
For
Okay.
the 3-car parking garage.
Okay, so training, all right. Nikki, are you going to lead this off, or is Thad here?
Thad is here this evening, and I think everyone on the board has probably met him in one capacity or another. So
Didn't he just give this to us like a couple months ago?
Yeah, exactly.
He did, but he has refined his sales pitch since then into a condensed fashion. And given our changes on really all of our boards and commissions, we thought that it was just good to reiterate this in a more abbreviated manner. So,
Nikki, I think there's a rule that you can't have more than 3 JDs on any review board. So this meeting might have to adjourn.
oh, okay.
Love here. This is kind of intimidating here.
I think the two of
Feeling
you,
the love at all.
I think the two of you will intimidate him. So, all
There
right.
you go.
All right.
Well, we'll turn it over to Thad. Thanks so much.
And before I begin, thank you for having me this evening. And I want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay, because I'm having a bit of a choppy lag receiving audio.
You're good on my end.
I hear you well.
Okay. So hopefully you can hear me better than I can hear you. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me, but bear with me, because it may take me a minute to understand unless this audio straightens itself out here. So I'll share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see a title page that says City of Dublin Architectural Review Board?
Yes.
Okay, I see head nodding. So I hope this evening to briefly go through, I think this will be a reminder for a lot of the folks on the board, if not everybody. I think I see several familiar faces and at least one face in a new place with board member Cooper. I was a little concerned that I had pulled up the wrong slideshow and was at a BZA meeting instead of an ARB meeting. So
On
I'll
a
go
new
ahead and
team
get
now.
started. A new team. All right. Well, we're glad to have you. So the law director for the City of Dublin, who handles or oversees all of the city's legal work, is Jennifer Radler. Her contact information is there on the screen. My contact information is below. I work primarily with the planning department and with Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as support for ARB and BZA on an as-needed basis. So if you have a question related to application of the law, or if you have a potential conflict situation or something that you want to run past me, please do feel free to reach out. That is what I'm here for, is to help you. And it's obviously much easier for me to give you a good answer if I get it in advance of a meeting and have a chance to really look at it and can get back to you in advance of the meeting. So we're going to go through just kind of the general authority of the board, that distinction that we talk about frequently between administrative action versus legislative action, and then principles of public law that are applicable to all public bodies, not just bodies in the City of Dublin or land use related bodies, but all open meetings, public records, and Ohio ethics law. So your general authority as the Architectural Review Board comes from Dublin's codified ordinances, and those are found in chapter 153, specifically starting at section 153.170. And looking at this kind of, I think it's always helpful to orient or reorient ourselves at times to what is the mission of the particular body that we're serving. And here it's really focused on that historic district, and there are a few historic sites under your purview that are outside of the district, sprinkled throughout the city and determined by council. All about promoting educational, cultural, economic well-being through preservation and maintenance of that district and those sites as reminders of the early architecture in Dublin. And then reviewing construction, preservation of architectural features, and serving as a recommending body to council for ordinances that affect either that district or those sites, adding sites or changing the regulations within the district as to land use and architecture. A lot of what the board does, I would say the lion's share of it in my experience, is this administrative action, things that apply existing law rather than creating new law. And for the most part, you're doing that by using a quasi-judicial process. Why is it quasi-judicial? Because you have an individual applicant, property owner, who is seeking to have a ruling on the rights, when you get right down to it, a ruling on their rights to use their property. And so that procedure is set up to be fair to that property owner, and to be fair to that property owner's neighbors and others who have an interest in how that property is used, and to be fair to the process for the city of Dublin, having established that historic district. And so testimony is given under oath. There is an opportunity for cross-examination if a person got up and was saying things about a particular project that were negative. An applicant could get up and cross-examine them on that and really press them on those statements. And conversely, if an applicant gave testimony that was positive about a project, then another interested party, if that's a neighbor, for example, could cross-examine them on those statements. Not something that happens very frequently in our process, but something that is available and has to be made available for purposes of the quasi-judicial process. This is done to develop a factual record given under oath through which you can apply the law that governs. And in this case, that law is the Dublin Codified Ordinances. All of this is done to create a good record so that if an aggrieved party chooses to appeal to ultimately to the Franklin County Environmental Court or to the Court of Common Pleas, there is a record for that court to look at and rule on, rather than having a new hearing in front of the court, which has a lot of downsides for everybody involved in terms of convenience, in terms of recreating sort of materials and testimony that was given, and of course taking it away from this local user-friendly body that we try to have here. Ex parte communication is another important part of maintaining the integrity of that quasi-judicial process, and I should say the avoidance of ex parte communication. That is any time as a board member you're communicating with an applicant or other interested party outside of the hearing setting and about an application that is pending before the board. It's not sort of a what do you think of this weather type of conversation. It is, what do you think of this sign application? Those are the types of conversations that need to be put on hold while an application is pending. That way, everybody who appears in front of the board is dealing with the same information and has a chance fairly to respond to it. And so those decisions, all of this is done so that the decisions that the board makes are defensible and are tied to the standards that apply to the application. So, we've talked about this some with our Planning and Zoning Commission members, and for the JDs on the board, you'll remember from law school, perhaps, that one of the things they taught us in terms of creating an argument in legal writing was structure it with this issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, which I think is kind of a helpful way to think about it from a board member's perspective. What is the question before the board? In this example, should the requested sign be approved? What is the standard that governs it? In this case, that particular code section. And then you take that testimony that is given in the meeting and apply that to the standards in front of you. How does it relate to the character of the district? Does it conform to what is written out in the code? And articulating that as you have your discussion and as you take your vote on it really helps us to create a good record for why decisions were made. And I think, perhaps as importantly or more importantly, make sure that the applicant and all of the interested parties have an understanding of really where the decisions are coming from and the authority on which they are based. That it is not, it doesn't come down to a matter of taste or true subjectivity. There are standards that have been adopted through council, and while there is discretion, that's the whole reason that we have a board, there are standards that guide that discretion. All of this is done to protect that procedural due process, which is simply notice and having a real meaningful opportunity to be heard. The other dimension of board action is legislative action, and that's where ARB would be a recommending body to city council. So those applications come through occasionally. I know that there were some pretty involved ones that came through earlier this spring, and so they can take up a lot of time, but they're very important because as the subject matter experts, council has entrusted you to really do that deep dive and be the first line of defense for the integrity of the historic district. And while not the decision-making body here, certainly an influential and recommending body. So next, I'll be moving on to some of the more general topics for all public officers and all public bodies. But before I do that, are there any questions about what I covered specific to the ARB and its the nature of its procedures? Okay, I see one shaking head and a couple of gray boxes, so I will take that as cue to move on. All public bodies, whether they make ultimate decisions or whether they are recommending bodies to a final decision maker, are required to have their deliberations and take their votes in public meetings. So that means a meeting that has been noticed or has had a regular meeting schedule that has been published in advance. And the meeting is anytime you have a prearranged discussion of public business of the body by a majority of its members. So if you have 2 members of the ARB, you don't have a meeting. If you have 3, well, then you have a majority of the 5, and that becomes, if you're talking about ARB business, in all likelihood, a public meeting or a meeting that should be public. This concept has really even become more broad than physical meetings, as you know, more and more business is done over email, text messages, and even on personal email accounts, which is one of the reasons why the City of Dublin strongly urges all of its commission and board members to use the city provided account, because not only are those messages public record if they discuss public business, if you have a text thread with a majority of the members of your body, courts have found that that can become a de facto meeting, in which case there was a pretty embarrassing case in the city of Cincinnati a couple of years ago where they had a majority of their council on a text thread talking about some issues with the performance of their city manager, and citizen sued under the Open Meetings Act, as well as requesting the public records of those text messages. And ultimately, the city had to gather and release those text messages, except for some that had been destroyed, which cost the city money. And then they had to take minutes of those text messages, which were not anything that anyone would have wanted to see on the front page of the newspaper. So something that we always have to be mindful of, because that you get, as anyone knows who has to scroll through email threads regularly in your profession, they can get out of hand before you know it. So just be very careful about that. Moving on then to public records. The record is anytime you have discussion of or information related to public business that is stored in some kind of tangible medium, whether that be paper, whether that be in an electronic format. It's ultimately the content that determines whether it's a public record and not the medium upon which it is stored. So if you have a phone conversation, an auditory phone conversation, that is not a public record because the conversation itself is not recorded. If you leave somebody a voicemail about what do you think of these draft historic district guidelines? I think that they're fantastic, or I think that they're not so great. You leave that in a voicemail to one of your fellow members, then that becomes a public record. And if requested, the city would have to retrieve it and provide it to the requester. And also it would, its disposal would be governed ultimately by the record retention schedule. So some things that are not records, your own personal notes, if you're taking notes while you hear applications, just to help you, organize your own thoughts before you deliberate and vote. Those personal notes are not records. You don't have to worry about how you keep them or worry about having them distributed. However, if you share those notes with one of your colleagues because she was absent at the last meeting and it's going to be back in front of the board, at your next meeting, then that becomes a public record because it's been shared. It helps to document an activity of the public body and not just your own personal thoughts. Likewise, as I've said, oral conversations are not public record. And so having a phone conversation or having, someday soon, hopefully, a cup of coffee and talking with a colleague about what's coming in front of you, hopefully that will be able to happen soon, and that would not be a public record. And I believe that everybody has an assigned Dublin domain email address. And so everything should be stored within that email address. If you do happen to get something from a personal email or send something from a personal email, I would encourage you to forward it to your Dublin email so that it is maintained and is accessible by city's IT staff if need be. Lastly, the topic of public ethics. So Ohio ethics laws apply to all public officials or employees. So that does include members of boards such as this one, as well as the staff of the municipality. Those laws initially are enforced by the Ohio Ethics Commission. There are a host of different ethical considerations, but I've tried to pull out a few here that are more, susceptible to occurring on a community board like this one, where you have a conflict of interest because, a family member or a business associate comes before with an application or something that would have a direct and definite financial benefit or detriment to them. So not just if they have their own application, but if their neighbor has an application in front of the board that would have some implication, positive or negative, upon your sister's property in the historic district, that would be a reason to abstain from discussion and voting of that application, because that would be a prohibited conflict of interest under the ethics law. And it's not just, sometimes there's a misconception that it's just a matter of, well, I can't vote on this matter. It's not just voting, it's all action or discussion of the matter with your colleagues on the board. So whether that's in the meeting, outside of the meeting, if that is talking to your sister about how to approach the board, about her neighbor's application, all of that would be prohibited in this conflict of interest situation, as well as voting. In a normal circumstance where we're having a physical meeting, my advice is usually for abstaining members to physically leave the room during discussion where they have a conflict of interest, because that removes any possibility that someone would say, well, there was some kind of non-verbal signaling, you know, a nod of the head or a facial expression that influenced how people were thinking about the topic. In Zoom or WebEx, you know, turning off your camera and mic is about the best that we can do. Soliciting or accepting things of value. So that is anything that would have a substantial and that could have a substantial and improper influence on performance of official duties. So it's the way that it is written that it's something that could have, not necessarily something that does have. So it's an objective standard, not a subjective one. If you know, there are some things that the Ethics Commission considers to be de facto things of value that have a substantial and improper influence, and I've listed some of those things there. So for example, a golf outing is if that's provided from an improper source, so somebody who has an application in front of the board, you know, maybe for a particular person, they say, well, that doesn't influence the way I think about their property and their application. Well, maybe it doesn't in your heart of hearts, but because of the way that the ethics law is written, it's an objective standard, and that would be a prohibited thing of value that cannot be accepted. So in that circumstance, a member would have to pay her own way or pay his own way in the golf outing, and that would be fine. So I know that was breeze through a lot of information there. A lot of it, I'm sure, is review for everybody, but happy to answer any questions that you may have before we conclude. And I will unshare this screen so that we can see each other. All right.
I'll ask you a question I asked you once before, and maybe this is unfair, but I don't mean it to be, because I'm not trying to make work for anybody. Has anybody ever watched one of our meetings and said, your board could do this better as a board, or there are these weaknesses in the way you're approaching, and you could, you know, and I'm not asking for individual criticism. I'm just the way evaluates the way the board functions and operates.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say, you know, I have not received a complaint or you know, a lot of commentary on a specific instance, but I would say for this board and boards generally is articulating when voting, and particularly if you are denying a request, or if it's a contested request in some way, articulating when voting why you're voting the way that you are, and what corresponding standard you know, has determined your vote. So that would be one, not just for the ARB, but for, you know, Planning and Zoning Commission, for planning commissions, and a lot of municipalities I work with. I think that we've been fortunate because of how, you know, well prepared the staff is, how well prepared the members tend to be, and how well, you know, how kind of proactive we are, that in the 4 years that I've been working with Dublin boards, we have had one appeal of a decision go to the environmental court, and that was dismissed once they had a transcript, because the articulation of the standards and reasons for the vote was well done. And then The only other thing I would say is just in informal reviews of things, just trying to make sure that there is a consensus that the board has and communicates to the applicant when they walk away with what they should be coming back with.
Okay.
I had a comment just when you made that comment about personal notes are not public records unless you share the notes. With the videotaping of our meetings or the broadcasting of the meetings via YouTube, you have the opportunity to go back and look at former meetings on properties perhaps that have been considered earlier and are now being considered again. And I think that's invaluable. And I certainly would recommend that we do that rather than rely on somebody's notes. Probably I'm saying this and everybody already thinks this way anyway, but I just made a note of that because tonight I took a lot of notes for myself, being my first time attending or participating in the meeting. And I was thinking that one of the things that helped me before I joined the board was I went back and looked at a couple of prior meetings to just get a sense of how the meetings proceed.
You know, there are some silver linings that show up from, you know, having to make these adaptations we've made in the last couple of years, or in the last 14 or 15 months, and I think that is definitely one of them. So
I recommended that when I was being interviewed by the mayor and vice mayor for, as we all were, I was at the time on the Board of Zoning Appeals, but I made that comment that I thought that even when we get to go back to in-person meetings, it would be helpful. Some people are very intimidated by attending one of these meetings. And if they are allowed to, if they're concerned about a particular property or a particular request, they may feel more likely to participate by watching and you know, coding in, if you will, to the WebEx meeting. So that was one of my comments to the mayor and vice mayor when we were having our discussion about thoughts and ideas, etc. Because I think that's very helpful. I think it's helpful to make this available to the public without them necessarily having to come into a hearing room setting and being able to submit comments. We haven't had any, and at the BZA, we hadn't had any either submitted, you know, during it, you know, live and in action cases. But I just think that that's a nice feature of the WebEx meeting. I personally can't wait till we go back to being in person because I've got my iPad here, I got my computer here, I got Nikki on speed dial here, I got my book of rules here, I got my notes and 2 drinks because you have long meetings.
I have one question. It's a relatively small community. So if there are vendors that you frequent regularly and they come before, or something comes before the board that impacts them, how do you avoid the potential appearance of conflict of interest if you're a regular one of these places and now they're coming before the board?
Well, what you're describing is, you know, if I stop at Jenny's every other day and get ice cream, like that sort of, you know, a regular business transaction.
Exactly. And then you rule in their favor for something. How do you avoid the perception and the people who there may be opponents and they know you frequent that place. How do you avoid that perception?
Well, I think in that type of circumstance, just being forthright and transparent is the best that you can do. Say, yeah, I do go to Jenny's every other day, and I, get a ice cream cone after work every day. But just because I like, their product, doesn't mean that I'm ruling in favor of their sign application, and here's why. I think that, putting it all out there in the open so that people can draw the conclusions that they will, hopefully most people will be reasonable and conclude that you're making the decision based on what you should be and not on some personal favoritism.
Okay. All right. Great.
I think that reminder on the IRAC rule, the old IRAC rule about tying back our voting, or the basis of voting either for or against or in support of or against a proposal to the facts and how those facts either comply or don't comply with the rules is really important. And tonight, all of you board members seem to have a lot of good references to the specifics of the rules that I have not mastered yet. I'll be honest, just got my rule book yesterday. But I think that that's just a really important way to prepare a record that's defensible. And even if there's a split decision, whoever, if it's like a 4-1 or 3-2 vote, we sometimes had those on the BZA where not everybody would be in agreement, and we would maybe still approve or disapprove of something in a variance case. But each of us always articulated the basis of our vote. So.
And any other questions?
Oh, and not to be redundant, sometimes it was for the same reasons as enunciated by board member so-and-so. It wasn't that you had to reiterate every word that everybody already had said, but just if there was going to be a factual determination that needed to be tied to the rule that wasn't being complied with, that was articulated. So.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, pleasure to see everybody. Thank you for your attention this evening, and hopefully we will see you again before too long, and perhaps even in person.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Thad.
Thanks, Thad.
All right. Nikki, communications, or Chase. I'm not sure which one. Chase has been speaking most this evening.
Yeah, we will give him a break on communications. So first item for communication, we have had a request for a special meeting to do a site visit at a site located at 72 to 84 North High Street. This was previously before you informally. I think there is an anticipation that it will come back before you, and the applicant thinks that it would be beneficial for you, along with staff, to view the site from various vantage points and to review the existing development on the site and the condition of those buildings just as they appear from the street. So we are looking to find a date to do that. The anticipation would be that would start at 6 p.m. And we would spend 30 minutes with the applicant. And then following that, you know, we would do 30 minutes with staff, visiting, you know, some various sites along North and South High Street, and potentially South Riverview Street that have been reviewed by the board in the last 2 years and subsequently implemented. So you can see what some of those things look like and, you know, which sign you like and maybe which sign you wouldn't approve again and vice versa. So those types of things. So I did identify 4 potential dates. And I wanted to get your take on which ones would be your primary preferred and secondary preferred. I know that Marty Cooper had reached out and is unavailable for 2 of the 4, but I did want to open it up to the group. So the possible dates are Wednesday, May 12th at 6 p.m., Thursday, May 13th at 6 p.m., Wednesday, May 19th at 6 p.m., and Tuesday, May 25th at 6 p.m.
The only day that's not real great for me is the 19th, but
19th.
I would
make it work if I had to.
I would prefer not to do it on the Tuesday, but if that's best for everybody else, I can rearrange my commitment. The other dates are fine.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, the 13th works the best. That's the one where I don't have anything, but.
Yeah, I'm
My
pretty good with 13th.
conflict, oh, I'm sorry, my conflict dates are the 12th and 13th. I'll be on a family vacation until the 17th. And it's been planned for a while, so I'm
Makes
not.
sense.
Did you?
All
You
right.
said the 26th. Was the 26th one of them? No.
Well, that's our meeting.
I was gonna say, what was the 4th one? Sorry, 19th and 25th must have been.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, 25th. Okay.
So far I have down Amy, you cannot do the 19th. Gary prefers not to do Tuesdays.
But
Sean,
if Tuesday works for everybody else, I'll rearrange things. It's a little hard having two of our meetings 2 nights in a row, but
I know. It's definitely not ideal. Maybe we'll get you all a scoop of Jenny's ice cream as a reward.
Bribery can work.
Right.
Down a couple spots to DVT would be better.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, this is government work, Frank. So keep it PG.
I'm from Chicago. We can get away with a lot in government.
Okay, so Sean, you prefer May 13th. Do you have a secondary?
I mean, for me, then the rest of them are okay. 12th is okay. The 19th is okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then Marty, you had shared that you are out the 12th and the 13th. So you are only available the 19th and the 25th.
I can make the 19th work, I think. I think I can move some things around, so 19th or 25th will work.
Okay. So based on what I'm hearing, I guess we'll probably say May 19th is the preferred date for everyone. First choice.
That probably works best for me too.
Is that doable for you, Sean?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. And then
Put that in right now.
So Nikki, I have a question though. What's the precedent for doing a site visit with the applicant? Like that seems extremely unusual for me and I'm kind of uncomfortable doing it.
It's almost like a meeting.
Yeah, I've never had that on any of the boards I've been to. And when I've been in the applicant's position and having to be before these boards, I've never done that. And it seems very unusual. So I'm just curious where that's coming from.
I think it raises a couple of legal issues too, because I think it requires a public notice. If we're all there, it's a quorum. And I also don't feel comfortable doing it with the applicant. I think if he wants to grant the board permission to go there together and walk around, but somebody's going to have to record us while we're there because that's a quorum and
Yeah, I just, it doesn't seem right to me that basically what he's doing is the applicant is selling his position to us. And yeah, it's a public meeting. We are all there.
Right, right.
And I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm fine with doing a walking tour of Dublin and looking at our sites and if people want to join us as a public meeting, fine. But I'm not really comfortable with the applicant being there showing us around.
Right.
Frankly, it seems like he should have, assuming it's a he, everything he wants to show us at his meeting. That's why we have the meetings.
Yeah.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, these are all very good comments. And I guess just to take a step back, so any walking tour or any site visit that we do is a public meeting, and we are required to provide notice to the community and publish an agenda. So we would be doing that. Any member of the community that would be interested in joining us on a walking tour and or site visit is welcome. And to Marty's point, it would not be video audio recorded, but in the past we have prepared summary minutes highlighting items that may have been visited or discussed. So it is very much a public meeting. We do ask, regardless of whether it's a site visit or a walking tour, that we don't deliberate on any cases. It really is for observation purposes only. I think you guys all do raise some very valid points, with the applicant's presence. So I will reach out to the law director's office, Jennifer Reidler, and then also in consultation with Thad Boggs, and we'll get a determination on that. I know the development director as well as the city manager have been instrumental in coordinating this. So I will work with Jenny to share, some of your concerns, and potentially it is one of those opportunities where we could be provided a written statement in advance and do some self-guided site visits. So,
yeah, and that's the thing, because there's no way, that applicant is going to push his position and he's going to speak to what he wants to do. And I just don't feel that it is appropriate for us to be in that position where basically he's selling his project to us, considering also it's a very controversial, considering the controversy already around this particular project.
Okay.
To go with Amy, I actually don't even know what the controversy is. I have to look into that. But this gentleman's time to sell his project to us is the actual scheduled meetings that are already on the schedule. I work in government as you do as well, and there are plenty of people that bring applications to our office and always try to have special meetings, and we can't do that because it's basically like we're playing favoritism. Why are we giving them the meeting and not everybody else?
Yeah, it sets a precedent that we're setting a special meeting just for one applicant, and then every applicant is going to come and ask for that.
Yeah, definitely. And, we do have a very limited precedent for this. I do believe the board did a site visit to 3032 South High Street at some point to look at the condition of those structures as they've been vacant for a very long time. Gary, I don't know if you were on the board when that happened.
I was, and I was told when we did that, the same applicant had an earlier board that I wasn't a part of walk through a house that the applicants wanted to demolish, and the board subsequently approved the demolition based on that tour. Now, the board, when we did that tour, everybody was pretty guarded, and they just looked at things and said, yes, we see the issues. But the board still did not permit, as you can tell from what's there, the board still did not permit the demolition to occur. And finally, they did something that the board passed, and we all thought was pretty good, using the buildings. But the point is, that precedent has been set. Maybe not with the same, legal grounding that the two of you have introduced, but I have a feeling that may be where it's coming from. My concern when I saw this is I thought Amy made really clear at that meeting that the new code has a very distinct steps you have to take to approve demolition. And if you're going to make the case that something is not a contributing or historic structure. And I think the comments were even made about the importance of bringing consultants in that you hire that provide factual information. And I think we would expect that to be a lot more thorough than just walking through one night and seeing some beams that may be deteriorated or things like that. So I hope this applicant doesn't think, even if we do this, I hope this applicant doesn't think that we make this decision. No, this decision is based on the facts and following that specific part of the code. So I hope you all, when you're talking to this applicant, and maybe the individual's watching now, but I hope they're still aware that even if we do this, they've got to prove those points, and they have to have documentation, and it's probably going to require outside consultants. So.
Yes, absolutely. And really the intent would be, Gary, as you said, to go not make discussion or comment, but really just to let the information resonate. And like I said, we'll get a determination from our law director's office, and the public hearing for any future application would be the process that we previously discussed, where, staff makes an independent assessment provided in advance in a staff report. The board makes their own assessment, considering public comment, and then potentially comes to a future conclusion. So, we would follow that process. So we will look at May 19th, and I will provide some follow-up on that. I also wanted to provide you all an update on the Historic Dublin Design Guidelines. So those are finally going back to Planning and Zoning Commission for a second hearing. The first time those were before the Planning and Zoning Commission at the end of March. There were some pretty substantive comments on the natural features section, and I really do think they were very valid, lots of opportunity, and I think you all will be very pleased with that. So Friday, when we publish the packet for the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'll also go ahead and share that draft with you all. But we've, provided more information regarding, earthworks, flora and fauna, the Indian Run Falls and Ravine, cemeteries, stone walls. So really just a lot of good foundational kind of information that together with the built environment creates the experience found in historic Dublin, which makes it unique from some of the other historic districts throughout Central Ohio. So I'm really looking forward to us getting those adopted. It's been a really long time coming. I'm hopeful that we can get some copies professionally printed and get those babies over to you. So
that would be nice, because I have the 1986 hard copy, which is a little outdated now.
Yeah. Okay, with that, I guess I would open it up to you all. Any other communications? I would also throw out, do any of you have upcoming summer vacations? You may have conflicts with meetings. It's always good to share those in advance.
I wanted to ask you, just going back on this proposed tour, when you talk to the law director and assistant law director, you might also just ask them if we should have legal counsel there.
Yes, yes, we can do that as well.
Also, hey, Nikki, I just happened to finally read my emails that you sent me this afternoon. I just glanced right now to see what this walking tour was about. And I'm definitely more in Amy's camp on this one. That especially the routes the first meeting took, I really would like this more documented in anything that people say. And frankly, as a board member, I am definitely one who would say I'm not comfortable with setting this precedent of having us, in my view, a special treatment for any applicant, period. If somebody even wants me to bring me to their house to show me their back porch they want to put on or something, I think that overall, you know, it's just a very bad idea. Like, no, we really need to keep it. Here's the form, this is the steps, and this is where you go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I fully agree with that, because I think this is a very important piece of property. I mean, not that we should treat other things in separate ways,
Sure.
but there are certain things in the city that are going to require extraordinary. I know, like you said, every deck and everything. There are things we can do as long as we document
government.
everything.
When you're dealing with government, it's not private industry. You're dealing with government, and you have to show that everybody has equal access to the same thing. And so if we give one person this access, it feels to me that you would need to give that access to the next.
Well, and that's why I think if we do a general walking tour, but don't have the applicant there, that's my preference.
Or
I think we can get a lawyer to intervene. Yeah.
Here's your
So I
upcoming
think
meeting.
these are all, I think these are all fantastic points, and I think we've all, you know, really
Marty?
made our perspective known.
I know you want to end this, Nikki. Marty wants to say something. Let's go.
Lawyer.
Go ahead, Marty.
But if the applicant wants us to go look at specific things that he is going to bring the structural engineer in to discuss, that's one thing, because I walked around all three properties that are on tonight's agenda.
Yeah.
And if he had a list of things that he submitted with his request and his people who were going to come talk about it, certainly it would be appropriate to go and look at those features, etc., from the street with my badge on. But going together as a group is I have a lot of heartburn over that. That just doesn't smell right. Doesn't feel right.
I mean, and like Marty says, every time we get our agendas, I'm sure all of us on our own time drive to building A, building B, and building C that's on the agenda to say, oh, okay, yeah, I see what this is and what's going on. And they can say, this is what's going on, this is what's proposed, and I use that as my guidance when I do it.
I have another comment too, because this, because of next month and the timing and all, I know the staff report that gets finalized, etc. And we get that the Friday before the meeting, and that's perfectly fine. But is there an agenda that's sent out maybe earlier than the Friday before the meeting that kind of just at least has the addresses of the properties being considered? Because if I see this address, I'm definitely going to go walk around it before I even get the report, so I have a good visual. And in that case, with everyone, with all of the other sites, and you know, the dead of winter can change things, you know, climate, etc. So you want to allow enough time for each of us to be able to at least become familiar with the property that's coming in. So that's just another comment.
Yeah,
I mean, I have a lot of free time, but
so that's a
the
fantastic
responsible adults who are still working might need more than 3 or 4 days to do a walk around.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic point about the timing of agendas versus packets versus meetings. So agendas are published 2 weeks before the meeting. So the Friday before the meeting and the following Friday, then the packet is published, and then we have the meeting. So if we take this meeting as a case study, the agenda was published on April 16th. The packet was published on April 23rd. And then this evening's the meeting. I do tend to attach the agenda. So on the Friday that I share the packet materials, just so everyone has a quick reference in case it slips our mind. But we can definitely make sure that all of you, just to confirm, all of you are receiving the agenda 2 weeks in advance of the meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's probably something that's already going on and I didn't know.
No, it's fine. I just want to make sure people are getting what they need because, you know, like the Vice Mayor said, we really are here to support you. So if you feel like you're not getting something from us that, you know, sets you up to be successful, I hope you know that our door is always open. My phone is always available. So, you know, just reach out.
Well, thanks for clarifying that that does come out that far in advance so that I can watch for it.
Great.
Anything else? I don't think there's any opposition to adjourning, so.
I
All
make
right.
the motion to adjourn.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.